Hi, my name is Miss Sasha, and I'm a teaching artist in the PACE Arts program. We integrate the arts with classroom curriculum. I'll be working with your classroom all year long through these videos. We're going to explore lots of different subjects throughout the year. We're coming to you today thanks to the Acadiana Center for the Arts and the Lafayette Parish School System. You can find these videos anytime through the Lafayette Parish School System website or the Acadiana Center for the Arts YouTube channel. You'll recognize some of the things you're learning with your teacher, but you'll be learning about them through visual arts and creative movement. You might be watching today from your classroom, or maybe you're watching from home. Today, we are going to use lines, shapes, and some color to make our art project. We are going to make a beautiful, colorful suburban community using these lines, shapes, and colors. Everybody's community is going to look very different because I'm going to give you lots of choices. The supplies we're going to use today are going to be 2 sheets of white paper, a variety of crayon colors, including black, and your creative imagination. I want you to notice up here all of these different communities, and I'm going to tell you all about them. We're going to work on a suburban community. Now is a good time to pause your video and collect your supplies. Now that you've gathered all of your supplies, let's get started on our suburban community. Today we're going to talk about community. A community is a group of people living or working together in the same place or area. People in a community have common interests or things that they like to do together or the same. There are 3 types of communities. The 3 types of communities we're going to talk about is going to be urban, suburban, and rural. An urban community is in the city, a suburban community is a neighborhood, and a rural community is in the country. I have pictures of all 3 of those right here. So the first one we're going to talk about is a rural community. A rural community is a community that's that has lots of land. A rural community is got few buildings. It doesn't have any businesses. It's more like a farm. So if you were to look out of your window and you lived in a rural community, what are some things that you might see? If you guessed a barn, that would be correct. In a rural community, you'll see barns. You're going to see lots of fields where farmers can grow things like wheat or corn or barley or sunflowers, whatever kind of community the farmers farm in that area is what you're going to see on the farm. What else might you see if you look out your window if you live or are looking at a rural community? Would you see some types of animals? Maybe pigs or chickens? You could see horses. What else might you see? Maybe turn to your neighbor and tell them something that you might see if you were driving down the road in a rural community. Turn to your neighbor. If you guessed lots of fences, or you guessed roads that went on for a long time, you didn't see a lot of cars, you don't see any buses, you might not see any taxis. What kind of transportation might you see if you lived in a rural community? Can you take a good guess? I'm guessing maybe a tractor. Maybe you might see them pulling maybe a trailer filled with pumpkins. You might see them pulling a trailer filled with maybe goats. Those are the types of animals or transportation you might see in a rural community. So if you look at these pictures up here, you see that there's lots of farmland, there's roads, there's silos for holding your different seeds and feeds. You may have a barn, and there's a house behind that barn. You don't have a lot of neighbors. So if you need some help, you have to go down the road to find a neighbor. That's a rural community. Raise your hand if you live in a rural community or if you live on a farm. Anybody? All righty. So the next community we're going to talk about is going to be an urban community. Anybody know what an urban community might be? If you guessed tall buildings, that would be correct. So a city, an urban community is usually a city community. It's with lots of tall buildings. It's a community that people live in that is larger and more crowded than a town or a rural community. It is a city like New York City. Let's look at this. You see this picture up here? This city has tall buildings. They're very close together. They have coffee shops and bakeries. They have places to go eat and restaurants. They have banks. They have, what kind of transportation might you see in an urban community? Could you see maybe a bus? Like a city bus that'll take you from place to place. You might see a subway. If you were in New York City, a subway is an underground train. Would you see taxis? What might you hear if you lived in this type of urban community? I'm guessing you might hear lots of talking, lots of horns honking. You might hear lots of cars whizzing on by. You'll see people going in and out of buildings. They might be carrying their briefcase and going to work in a tall, tall building. In downtown Lafayette, we have some tall buildings, and that would be part of the urban community. And when you have an urban community, you have people that live and work and eat and sleep in this same area. So they'll have grocery stores and everything you need in this one little community. It's different when you live in a rural community. If you need groceries, you have to drive into town to go and get your groceries. Or if you need the hospital, you have to go into town. Our third community that we're going to talk about is going to be a suburban community. And I'm guessing most of you kiddos live in a suburban community. Do you know what that is? Can you take a good guess? If you guessed a neighborhood, then you probably live in a suburban community. It's a community that's outside of the big city. So it's not in here next to New York City or downtown Lafayette. It's where people live in neighborhoods. They live in individual houses like this. They might have sidewalks, or they might live in a small apartment complex. That would also be a suburban community. Or you might live in a mobile home area where you have several mobile homes that are all together. So those are all suburban communities, all right? So raise your hand if you live in a suburban community. I would have to raise my hand. I live in a neighborhood. We have a neighborhood pool. We have sidewalks. We have mailboxes. We have a postman that comes by and drives in his car. We have parks. And right outside of our little neighborhood, our little suburban community, we have grocery stores and pharmacies and libraries and police stations. So those are our suburban communities. All right, let's go over that real quick. So this is urban, this is suburban, and this is rural. What type of cars might you find in a suburban community? Or what type of transportation? I think I said a few just a minute ago. You might see cars, postmen, school buses for sure, right? You can call a taxi. You can call a taxi here, and you can call a taxi when you're in the city. But this probably doesn't sound like a city. It's a little bit quieter. Everybody goes to sleep around the same time. Here, this community might be, the lights are on late in these places, right? People still work. Now that we've talked about our three main communities, right? Rural, urban, and suburban, we're going to kind of bring it in a little bit so you guys can talk about where we live in a suburban community. So we notice that communities are all different sizes, right? Different communities have different people, activities, lifestyles, events, traditions, landscapes, transportation, and buildings. So, with that being said, our little community near our school is what we're going to talk about. So today, we want to focus on the word community. All right? A community is a place where people live together, right? So we all belong to lots of different communities, lots. There are communities inside of communities, depending upon where you live, your hobbies, your sports, etc. So if you play sports, you might be in that community. If you have different hobbies and maybe you like to do pottery, then that might be a different little community. So there's lots of tiny, tiny communities that you all belong in and you might not even know it. So for today, when we go to draw our community, we're going to talk about some lines and some shapes, and we're going to practice them on this paper before we draw on here. So we have one paper for practice and one paper for drawing our community. And what I'm hoping is that once we're done with our little suburban community, you can hang them up on the wall and form your very own neighborhood, your classroom neighborhood, once we can put them all together. Okay? So we're going to start very, very small talking about our community. The first community we're going to talk about is our family home. Our family home is a very small community. It might be a tiny family, might be a really large family. My family community is my son, who is in college. His name is Elliot, and I have some cats. So that is my tiny little family community. Who in here has a little family community? You should all be able to raise your hand for that. Maybe you could turn to your neighbor and tell your neighbor how many people live in your tiny family community. Good. Now maybe you can turn to the person on the other side and ask them how many people they have in their little tiny family community. Do you have any pets? Do you have some fish? That would be part of your family community, right? Some people even live in a little family community that might have their grandparents in there, maybe an aunt or an uncle, right? You might have a cousin that lives with you. That's part of your tiny family community, all right? So you belong to lots of different communities. And so when we start talking about a larger part of our community, like you might live in a house or an apartment or a mobile home or a camper. So the people that live in your, say, your mobile home area, that's part of your community. That's your tiny community that's bigger than your family community, right? So when we get started practicing over here, we're going to refer back to our little communities as well. Okay, so let's get something drawn on the paper. Grab your black crayon. All right, we're going to practice drawing our lines that we've been talking about for the last 2 lessons. Let's go over those. Remember, we talked about 6 different lines. Let's practice drawing at the top of our paper, maybe a straight line. Because we can use our straight line to draw part of our ground. We can use our straight line to make these shapes, right? We can do the tops of the houses. I use straight lines on this picture for my sunshine, for the sun rays, remember? All right. How about a zigzag line? It goes up, down, 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 up, down. Remember, we can draw them differently. Big zigzags and little zigzags. I'll go ahead and say it while you practice. Ready? Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Little, little, little. Where on our picture can we use zigzag lines? Look at this. The top of these houses is a zigzag line. How about down here? Grass. Zigzag, zigzag, up, down, up, down, up, down. Perfect. If you need to practice again, sometimes it helps me just to go over the zigzag line with my finger. It gets my hand all ready to draw, right? You could do it in the air, up, down, up, down. I think zigzags are pretty easy. What do you think? All righty. Let's do wavy. Wavy sometimes is a little bit hard. Wavy's my favorite line. If you remembered, there's no points at the top and there's none at the bottom. Look, wavy. Wavy, wavy, wavy. You can practice it with your finger. Remember, if you don't get it perfect this time, we're going to still practice these as we go through drawing as we have art together throughout the school year. All right, go ahead and practice your wavy lines. All right, curved. Watch, bump, bump. Remember, this was the little line that reminds me of like a rabbit jumping or a frog jumping, right? Boing, 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 boing. Or you could draw it this way. Boing, 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 boing. And if you connect those, you make clouds. Go ahead and practice drawing your curved lines. And then maybe you can look around and see where on my picture I drew curved lines. All right. You got it? All this practice, it's going to make it easier to draw, all right? And we also talked about dotted and dashed lines, right? So look at my doorknobs are actually a dotted line. They're just spread far apart. Remember, you could do dots, little tiny dots, or you could do big circles for dots. You could do those as doorknobs, right? On this little tiny picture over here, you can see these little bitty dots on the roof, and we can add some of those in later. But on these pictures, there's lots of different lines. There's straight, look, curved, curved. All the roof shingles are curved. This window is curved. I love these little pictures. It's kind of what we're drawing. We're making like a color book page, right? So when we go to make our color book page, we can always come back and color our picture in. If I wanted to color these in, I could do it too. But look, there's lots of curved lines. There's lots of dotted lines. I don't see too many dashed lines on this picture, right? Look at these zigzags, straight. Look, wavy. This sunshine is really wavy, or it could be wind. We don't know. Okay, so look, we'll practice our dashed line. Remember, it's line, dash, 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 dash. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and find the very center of our picture and put a little dot there. You got it? You got the center? Perfect. All right, this is going to be the line that is going to be our roof line. It's a straight line. Did you notice that? It's a straight line. It goes from one side of the page to the other. It's going to be this line. Don't go ahead of me though, okay? We're going to draw this, our community together. We're a little art community, right? So watch, I'm going to go all the way across that little dot to make my roof line, okay? So we practiced our straight. Now we have a straight line here for our roof. All right, got it? I'll give you a little time to go across. I kind of went under there, but that's okay. I'll go right over it again. Remember, we can make a few little tiny mistakes. We're still learning. Okay, you got it? Perfect. All right, let's do a zigzag line down here for our grass. Watch. Up, down, 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 up, down. Don't go too high because that's where our houses are going to go, right? Look. Perfect. Got it? Right across the top of our grass, it's going to be like our little sidewalk. Watch. Whoa, I kind of went wavy. It's supposed to be a straight line, but it kind of got wavy. So while you're drawing your wavy line, let me talk about another little community that you live in. You might not even know. It's called your school community. Your school community is where you go to school. It's the whole school. That's the principal, that's the librarian, that's your teachers, your students, the nurses. Can you think of somebody that I might have forgotten? Maybe it's, the secretary at the front, right? What about the ladies who make your delicious lunch? The cafeteria ladies? And how about the guys who clean your school up and keep it all mopped and smelling good for you? That is your custodians. They are your school community. Okay? And we're going to go even smaller. All right? Your besides your whole school, right? We're going to talk about your classroom community, right? That's the people in your classroom, right? That's your teacher. That's the students in the classroom. Maybe you have a class pet in the classroom, right? Some people have guinea pigs or fish that might be in your classroom. Turtles, I've seen turtles in the classroom. So that's your classroom community. It gets even smaller and smaller. Okay, let's go ahead and we're gonna make some more straight lines that go down. This is gonna be our little houses, right? Watch, I'm just gonna put 3 and I'm gonna spread them out. Watch. I'm sorry, I'm gonna put 2. 1, 2, look. Here's 1. I'm not gonna do it right next to that. I need to leave some space, and 2. All right, those are straight lines. If you want to go on the edge right here, you can. That's more straight lines. So now we have 3 houses. If you have more than 3 houses, that's okay. All right. Now, we're going to do our roof. Our roof is going to be triangles, or it could pretty much be a zigzag line. What? Watch. Here's 1 roof. Here's 2 roofs. And here's 3 roofs. I'm making my neighborhood, right? My suburban community. All right, let's talk one about a social community. A social community is a group of people that you enjoy spending time with. What do you think those are called? I call those people my friends. If I like to spend time with people, they're usually my friends, right? So that's part of your social community. And with your friends, another part of a social community is the group of teammates that you might have. You might be on a team, a social community. It's a group of teammates. Raise your hand if you play a sport. I do. Raise your hand if you've joined an art class. I have. Raise your hand if you go play games with somebody in your neighborhood. That might be part of your social community. All right? All right. Let's do a curved line to make our trees behind our houses. Watch. Bump, 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 curve, 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 curve. Look at that. I have trees behind my house. So, did you know that your school is part of your neighborhood and that it's usually located near your home, right? So that's part of your community. Your school is in your community. It's usually located near your home. And within your school, you have your classroom community. You have your social community, right? Which is like your schoolmates or your teammates, right? And it goes on and on until it might be even bigger than that, right? The whole school, your teachers, your principal, your custodians, right? So there's lots of communities within communities, right? Remember, we're doing our suburban community. All right, so I have some choices up here. You can have a night sky or you can have a day sky. You decide. You decide. This one's a circle. If you don't know how to draw a crescent moon, I'll show you how to do that on your practice page. You ready? What? You could do a letter C. And then watch. I start at the tippy top over here, and I go behind my C to make a crescent moon. That way I can have a night sky. And I did my stars in little circles, but you can do stars if you know how to do stars. You can even do spots in the sky, and that can be stars. I'm okay with that. All right? So let's go ahead. I think I'll do a day sky, right? What if I could do, what other skies could you have in your neighborhood? What other weather could you have? Could you have rainy? You sure could. It's been raining around here a lot. Maybe we'll do rainy. Maybe I'll do clouds in the sky. Watch, bump, 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 bump. And I'll do lightning. Lightning can be a zigzag. Watch. And then I'll do rain. Raindrops, right? Of course, you can have rain on your trees if you like. Maybe don't put them on your house so we can add different shapes to our house. All right, let's go ahead and add some, you can add, what do houses have on them? Do they have doors? That's a good start, right? You can't get into your house if you don't have a door. I did my doors, some in the middle, some on the side. Watch. Don't do them too tiny. I'll do this one on the side. I'll do this one in the middle. And I'll do this one on this side. You can add some doorknobs. How are you going to look out the window if you don't have any windows? You can go ahead and add windows. Look, I did some rectangle windows. I did some square windows. I even did some circle windows. Some of them are on the roof. Some of them are in the on the house right here. Some of them could be on the door. How about next to the door? This is a long window. I'll put a circle on this one. And I'll do 2 squares on this one. All right. Remember, these little roofs had shingles, right? Look, you could do zigzag shingles. You could do curved shingles, right? What else would you add on your house? I might add sidewalks. Watch. Here's a sidewalk from the door to the grass. Maybe here's a sidewalk. Maybe this one's straight down. Some of these have designs on them. Look. Ooh, maybe some of them even have like a box that they have flowers in. Look. Little window box, right? Maybe some of you have porches. Maybe some of you have a porch swing. What else could you have on your house that would make your house look really amazing in your little suburban neighborhood? I have a sunshine hanging on my wall at my house. You might have a mailbox. You can add anything to your house. And when you decide that you want to color it in, you can use whatever colors you would like to design your house. Okay? I would do mine very bright. I like a bright, beautiful neighborhood. These houses are all white over here, but my neighborhood, like this one, would be very, very bright. Okay? I hope you enjoyed drawing your suburban neighborhood with me. And now when you're done coloring it in, your teacher can hang your neighborhoods all together and you can have a whole community, right? Thank you for joining me today. We learned so many things. We learned all about communities. We learned about rural, urban, and suburban communities. We practiced our lines. We drew some cool shapes. And we even drew our very own suburban neighborhood. As you go through your week, I want you to try to notice the things that you see in your neighborhood. Maybe different types of transportation, maybe different styles of houses. Maybe you could share with some of your friends some of the tiny communities that you live in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you next week.